Welcome to the serialized version of my book, You're the Last Person I Thought Could Quit Smoking. I hope you'll use it to finally stop killing yourself with cigarettes. Watch all the chapters and learn why and how I quit after 45 years of loving to smoke a lot. It's a funny thing about that little voice. It never goes away, and it never gives up. This is Chapter 2, Smoky Days. You can try to run, but you never get away. And if you're lucky, there comes a time when you listen to it and act in your own best interest. I work in the music business, the concert and recording fields. It's a line of work that regularly presents a lot of downtime when waiting is actually part of the job. Quite a few of us in this business smoke, a lot, and almost all the time. I started out as a roadie, a guy who sets up the equipment and takes care of the musicians. There's no better time to be a smoker than when a band is rehearsing for hours on end, and there's nothing else to do until something breaks or you have to go get dinner for everyone. Or when you're driving a truck hundreds of miles to the next gig. Or sitting in a studio while the band works on an album. In the 1970s, I worked for the Tubes, a band from my hometown, Phoenix. When we moved to San Francisco, I got a gig with Santana, a band that spent a hell of a lot of time in the studio. And I spent a hell of a lot of time smoking and flying around the world on planes that let us smoke. Those were smoky days indeed. All that traveling around the world gave me many opportunities to add to my growing collections of ashtrays and lighters and to sample exotic cigarette brands from around the world. Life just couldn't be any better for a dedicated smoker such as moi, but in 1977, I wanted to try something new. So I left the Santana organization in 1978 and became a video director, still working in the music business and still smoking a lot. That voice inside my head continued to ramble on about quitting, and I continued to ignore it. I was still smoking Camel Straights, but in the 70s, I fell for the tobacco industry's bullshit and switched to True 100s, an ultra-low tar brand. I believed that would give me much more enjoyment and lower my intake of tar nicotine. What a smokescreen. Yeah, pun intended, sorry. I figured out how to cover the little holes in the filter and continued to max out my intake of each cigarette's addictive, harmful chemicals. I felt that I would quit someday because even I found it hard to explain away all the obvious facts about smoking's health issues. And I couldn't deny the obvious impact on my wallet as the cost of cigarettes continued to rise. Still, though, I lacked that last nudge of something that would push me out of my smoke-filled existence into a smoke-free life. It wasn't a something that would set me free. It was someone. In 2001, I fell in love with Linda, a wonderful woman I met through a mutual friend. We were from different worlds. She, a divorced doctor's wife, former nurse with 2 sons. Me, a widowed rock and roll pirate, still sailing the world. It didn't seem to matter, though, because we had good times together, and we had a few things in common, including that we both smoked. We grew more and more in love. She would visit me on the road, and we would take side trips to wonderful places, and constantly struggled to find a hotel with smoking rooms. The world doesn't seem to want you around as much when you're a smoker. You may keep telling yourself it doesn't matter, but deep down inside, you know it does. No one wants to be a pariah or an outcast. You can ignore it for a while, but eventually you have to admit that maybe having to stand outside in the rain or snow to suck down another cigarette isn't very cool. Maybe there's a legitimate, impossible-to-ignore reason you are more alone each time you have to find a designated smoking area. Ponder that with an open mind, because it might help you decide once and for all to stop doing something that appeals to an ever-dwindling group of people. There just might be a logical reason for people's dislike of your habit. You'll make up your mind to do this when it's right for you, but you can begin now to take the steps outlined later in this book. Yes, for once, you want to be known as a quitter. Linda knew we should quit too, and sometimes we would talk about it, over cigarettes. That's the thing, isn't it? You can ignore the elephant in the room forever if that's what you wish, and if you accept that there is an elephant where your coffee table should be. Why stop doing something you genuinely enjoy and that gives you pleasure every time you do it? Aside, that is, from a potential future that has the elephant sitting on your chest so you can't breathe. Just after Christmas 2006, Linda and I both got the flu. We thought we might have to postpone what had become a traditional New Year's trip to Oregon to see my dad. Linda's symptoms persisted. She became sicker, and so we scheduled a doctor's appointment for January 10th. Her son would drive her to the doctor's office so I could continue to suffer at my house. Linda's son called me on the day of her appointment and said that Linda was so sick that I should take her, even though I was still sick too. When I arrived at her house, she was barely able to breathe and unable to walk. She said she could crawl to the car, but even in my own sick state, I couldn't allow that, and I called an ambulance because she was seriously, seriously ill. They admitted and intubated her the moment she arrived at the hospital. She had pneumonia to the extent that they induced a coma and rushed her to intensive care. She would be in the ICU for 2 months, a machine breathing for her, tubes and IV lines attached to her and in her like plastic snakes. It was frightening to see, and I had never felt more helpless and alone. She remained in a coma for 18 days as doctors worked to save her. I would sit in her room and look at her, the sound of the breathing machine a constant audible reminder of how sick she was. And I would gaze at her and think how much I loved her and how terribly helpless I felt watching her fight for her life. During those weeks, I would go home at night and write emails to Linda, telling her how I felt, hoping she would recover to read them someday. It is strange what we do to accommodate ourselves when things aren't going the way we wish they would. I went back and read those emails much later. They made me cry again. Those were awful days. It turned out that MRSA, an aggressive, multiple drug-resistant microbe, was found to be at the bottom of Linda's illness. It was a serious complication to an already drastic situation, because it spreads through the system rapidly, and in many cases it kills its host by depleting the body of oxygen. It was beginning to look like she might not survive. Thanks for watching this chapter of my book. Come back for the next chapter and to continue on the road of quitting at your own speed like I did. And please let us know how you're doing and if we are helping you to stop smoking once and for all.